Hi, Simon. Welcome to Director's Notes.
Oh, Sarah, thanks so much for having me.
No problem. So we're here today to talk about your short, Such a Lovely Day. Please tell us a wee bit about the film.
Yeah, so it's it's a sort of sad and sort of sorry tale about a boy trying to understand his parents' marriage. Yeah, I was sort of wanting to sort of make a really complicated grown-up situation.
Mm. I mean, you very
And
much done
then
that.
yeah, and then to send a kid through it and to take our audience through that child's point of view and try to understand the problem, try to kind of solve the puzzle in his family and his parents' marriage. So it's a kind of yeah, it was sort of taking the audience absolutely into this boy's understanding of the world and to take him into a place that where everyone was having a really lovely time. Um, and to make a world that felt really sort of beautiful and lovely and gorgeous and then to have a sort of rotten core to it.
Yeah, there's a
That's
lot
what I
of there's a lot of juxtaposition, isn't there?
mm.
Everything's sort of beautiful and happy and wonderful seeming, and then, we're not going to give any spoilers away, but then when it sort of hits, I mean, I gasped the first time I watched it. Sort of,
Oh,
you're like, ah, right, okay.
good. Yeah, I mean it's a horrid little film, isn't it? That's what we had such a nice time making it, and everyone was, we had this we had this amazing weather, and we were out in the kind of sunshine, and we had this lovely time making this sort of sad little film, really.
So tell us a bit about your background, because you're not traditionally a film director.
No, so I've been an actor and a writer in the theatre, and so this is the first film I've made. But I was an actor on film sets for ages, and I always sort of went and sat behind the monitors and asked loads of questions, and always loved being, you know, in the video village and in the makeup truck and the wardrobe truck and asking the director lots of questions and trying to understand what it meant about crossing the line and all that kind of thing. I was always sort of wished I was on the other side, really.
So it
Um,
felt very natural for you.
yeah, always knew it was something I wanted to do. It just took me quite a long time to do it. Um, and yeah, and then I wrote a feature film for BBC Film, and then this um, uh, opportunity came up to make a short. And I sort of I just knew what I wanted to try and achieve. I just knew I wanted to try and take an audience into one person's point of view, because writing for the theatre is so different, because you present your piece of work and everybody experiences it from their own point of view.
Yeah.
But then film, you have this just amazing opportunity to take your audience into one person's understanding of the world and one person's um, to see it through one person's eyes. So I sort of thought, well, that's what I'm going to try and do.
And so how did it come that you're working with the BBC?
Um, so I had I have a feature film in development with them, and then I was saying, like, how would it be? How do I get to the point where I'm allowed to direct the thing that and so I think this was, then I pitched this idea to them, and they went for it.
Amazing.
Really, yeah.
So, I mean, there's such a grand feel to the story. The
Mm,
house, the family,
mm.
all of the sort of the atmosphere that we've got there. What were you drawing on from that?
Yeah, just so what I wanted to do was to make this feeling like the more kind of the bigger and the more wonderful and showy and fun and exuberant they all were, I felt the worse the little dark heart of the story could be.
Yeah, it
So
does.
I
'Cause
tried to kind of cast in that way and to just get an atmosphere going of kind of like kind of somewhere between like languor and exuberance, where they've just got all the time in the world, and their lunch could go on for 7 hours if they wanted to, and they're going to play a game and they're going to do a silly skit and stuff like that. And the more kind of like loose and lovely and but also kind of awful it felt. Yeah, I was trying to tread that line between something that was appealing and something that was kind of appalling. Yeah.
And there are a couple of things. I mean, I've watched the film, a few times now, and sort of the more you watch it, the more there are sort of these little nuggets that you've obviously dropped in the writing along the way. But one of the things that really stood out to me is sort of the color palette of the film. So, like you said, it's a bright, sunny day.
Yeah.
It's quite muted.
Yeah. So, well, yes, we try to be sort of green and gold, and sort of I think what I was trying to do with the visuals was always to be telling the story of the film, which is about a sort of public, the way in which people present themselves in public, and the kind of awful secrets people hold in their hearts. And so I tried to create, with my DOP Dave Pym, this continual contrast between the bright outside and the dark inside. So almost every shot we've tried to do that. We've tried to sort of have the interiors are hardly lit and the outside is really, really bright and beautiful. And so we kind of, even when they're in the car, the foreground is dark and the exterior is bright. So we tried to sort of have a kind of green and gold for the outside and everything being lovely, and then a kind of dark, a sort of dark heart to it in the inside of the house.
Yeah. And there's not much bright color.
No.
Even in all their clothes, I was noticing, they're
Yeah.
all quite like muted tones and everything.
Well, thanks for being such a good viewer, Sarah. Yes. Well, and then there's this one piece of bright clothing. There's this one red shirt which comes, and I felt like I just wanted to take. Yeah, it was always trying to play with sort of loveliness and danger, and to make something that felt very mellow and muted and sort of like everything we were trying to be sort of like linens and natural cottons and all in these kind of washed muted colors, and then to have this one sort of dangerous shirt which has a bit of red on it.
It's a warning, isn't it? Like
I think so. I mean,
red
yeah,
is warning color.
Yeah. So we just tried to sure, it's such a funny thing, isn't it? Because it's like a sort of little jewel box. You think so much about every element. You plan out every shot in advance. It's every element of it has to mean something because it's so short. And you mustn't waste any time or any space or anything. So I just try to think all the time, am I telling the story in this shot? Am I telling the story in the costumes? Am I telling the story in the color? I was just trying to make sure I was always like sort of serving this story.
Yeah. Well, it works. I noticed everything. So you were talking earlier, obviously it's from this young boy's perspective. And one of the things I noticed is, I mean, he's incredible. He's so stoic, and you can tell there's so much going on in his mind.
Yeah.
And one of the scenes that I love the most is when they're in the kitchen. So there's people coming in, there's things going on, but we're just sort of, there's busyness, but we're just kind of following him slowly. How did you film sort of that scene and really get us into his mind?
So that was how I thought about the whole film. I always thought about it like, and I don't think we achieved it all the time actually, because making a short, we had to film it in 3 days. You don't have the time, but how I always imagined it was he was sort of still, and the world moved, the camera moved around him, and the rest of the cast moved around him. So that we just set up each scene. We sort of anchored him in position, and then we moved everybody around him. So we just we basically just went over his shoulder. That was our sort of principle. Whenever if in doubt, we were over his shoulder onto the rest of the world, or from his point of view. And we just rehearsed it like a little play, really. Although we had no time, we rehearsed a lot. So because I had a big, I think there might have been 17 people in that scene, and so we just did a little rehearsal, and I was lucky to have really good actors, and they were really up for it. Everyone was really up for delivering this story in a short amount of time. So we just got everyone just got the atmosphere going, and we rehearsed it like a little play, each scene like a little play in a way.
I mean, it is powerful because you're in his mind. I mean, I was the whole time, and the film is obviously, when you watch it, it's building up to something, but you don't know what.
Yeah.
So sort of this whole point, it's quite tense, isn't it? You've managed to bring that. You're like, what's coming? I don't know what's going to happen. Because as you said, it's beautiful and gorgeous and family, and it's all happy.
Yeah, I hope so. That's what I mean. I was trying to just deliver this feeling of like mounting sort of dread, and a reveal. I like a short film that gives you a big experience of some sort.
Oh, I agree. And those are the ones that stick with you. Those are the ones that you're like, oh God, I remember that.
Yeah. Yes.
So, I mean, all of the casting is beautiful, but I wanted to speak about what Edward Blumel. So I hated him right from the start.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
was supposed to.
yeah. I mean, look, what was great was that he was terrible and magnetic at the same time.
Oh, he's charming. He's affable. Like,
Yeah,
I've met people like
yeah,
him before, and you
yeah,
can't help but be drawn to them.
Yeah, and that's in a way, that's a part of the sort of reveal of the film. He has to be a kind of showman in order to get away with everything. And I think I was really lucky with him, because it's really hard to find actors who are relaxed in their body. I think you think it's like the first thing actors can do is just be really sort of naturalistic, but actually it's quite hard to be sort of fluid and relaxed on camera, and he's got that quality, and and it's kind of charming, but it's also, you're like wary of it. I think when you see him, there's something about his whole way he moves that one's kind of wary of, which is what made me cast him.
And so was that what you were looking for? Someone who's
Yeah, I
quite
wanted somebody sort of like who could kind of like own a space and be gregarious and stuff. Which is it's quite hard to play gregarious. People don't, it's hard without being sort of overly theatrical to be just the sort of center of attention guy. It's not always what actors deliver, I think.
No, fair enough. Yeah, I can see that, because you don't want it to come across as exaggerated.
Yeah, exactly.
Which it doesn't at all.
No, he was great. And they were all great. I mean, I was so lucky. Everyone just worked really hard for this intense period of time, and people had really prepared and thought about it and came with these lovely performances ready. It's great.
Yeah, they all tie in together. You can see them as a family. You can see them all at some kind of gathering, and but obviously without the terrifying conclusion.
Yeah, yeah. And Tommy, who plays the boy, was just such a find. Because without him, if he hadn't been good,
yeah,
there would have been no film, because he's in every shot of the film.
He's in every shot, and I love the shot as well. When he's coming in, when they're all sort of starting to perform, and he's coming in, and you sort of track him with the camera. It's almost like an artist, as if they're going out onto stage or a big performance. And
yeah. I did think about that, like the shot of Madonna coming up from the dressing room.
I thought that as well. I thought, like, if you're watching a gig and the behind the scenes thing, yeah. And it's amazing. He grows then.
Yeah.
He's still a child, obviously, and we've sort of seen him, but then he grows, and you can see there's something.
Oh, you're my favorite ever viewer. Thanks. Yeah. It was like he'd sort of been passive throughout the film, and then he has to just cross this massive line. You know, the character just has to do something to sort of, he just has to become a man in that moment. I mean, that was exactly what I wrote in the script. He has to become a man and do a thing.
Yeah. And your background in acting, obviously, was that, does that help you working with the actors and their performances?
Yeah, I think so. Having been on like good film sets and not so good film sets, and worked with good directors and not so good directors, you just know what's helpful, and what you need sort of in your toolbox when you start. And I think it's the actual filming of the scene is quite hectic, and there's quite a lot going on, and there's hair and makeup and lights, and there's cameras, and it's quite hard to sort of center yourself and do what you want to do there. So I always felt like, particularly with the child actor, that the more we talked away from the set about what was going to happen and what he had to hold on to,
yeah,
the easier it would be for him. So we sort of chatted. We just went through the script several times, like, what's really happening here? What are you sort of holding on to? What are you wanting? What's happening? What's really happening? What are you trying to understand here? So that when there were master people and everyone was sort of moving around him, he would know what it was he was trying to hold on to. And when I was an actor, I was always on a horse, and I hate horses. So I always thought, like, well, you know, I tried to imagine, like, this is a horse scene. What would I have wanted in a horse scene? I would just want I would really just need to know what I was doing.
You got pigeonholed then with horses.
Always on a horse.
So, I mean, the film has been BAFTA nominated.
Yeah.
This is your first, directorial debut. What does that mean to you? How has the whole process been?
Oh, it's been amazing. The whole thing's been amazing. It's weird making a short, because you don't know if people like it. You don't know anything about it, really. You don't really, you just don't know. So
Yeah.
when we were longlisted for the BAFTAs, that felt amazing, and being shortlisted even more so. And it's, for me, I asked people to come on this journey with me and work for almost no money and just sort of believe in this little idea. So for me, for everybody else who worked on it, it's so nice, and for my producers who put loads of time into it, and for everybody involved, it's just such a sort of magical thing, really.
And I mean, are you going forward then? Is the feature, you've got the bug?
Yeah, totally. I've got a couple of things I'm trying to two things in sort of various stages in the pipeline, and I feel I'm just got to put as many irons in the fire as possible and try and hope that one of them comes off.
Well, you're off to a good start.
Thanks.
Thank you so much, Simon. This has been really beautiful.
Thank you so much.